6:30. Now please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I always want to say two, like in the Boy Scouts, you know, when you put your. All right, do we have any citizens statements or petitions anybody wishes to make? There's no hands up, right?
Cindy's here. She's waving.
Hi, Cindy.
Well, would this be a good time to introduce you to Karis, or is that on?
Sure, that's, yeah, well, yeah, sure, that's fine. Why don't we do that?
Karis, are you the other K?
Maybe she's not on yet. For those of you that aren't aware, our town council is, I believe, taking a new job with, she's going to be a city solicitor for, is it, what city is it?
Somerville.
For Somerville. So she's going to be the city solicitor for Somerville. So she's turning the reins over to another member of the law firm.
I thought the K was Karis, but apparently it is not, so I guess we'll just have to wait for her to come in. Sorry about that.
All right. I don't believe we have any correspondence to the board that needs to be read. So the first agenda would be item number 4, which would be open seats on the boards and committees. And what I'd ask is that we had several people express interest for the ZBA open seat, and then someone for the finance committee open seat. What I asked is we'd interview some of them this week, and then in 2 weeks, we'll interview the rest. But the first one, I'd like to take the candidate for FinCom, Mr. Adam Griffin. Is he?
He's here.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Mr. Griffin, how are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
Great, thank you for offering to volunteer to be on the FinCom. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I've lived in Mendon since 2019. Prior to that, I was in a couple different towns, but my entire career has been in nonprofit finance, both on the for-profit side as an auditor and a consultant. And most currently, I'm a CFO of a $30 million nonprofit down in southeastern Massachusetts. So given all my experience and background, I thought it'd be a great addition to the committee. I do enjoy spreadsheets. I'm an accounting nerd like that. So, comparison of budgeted figures and projections and things like that is kind of my wheelhouse. And just hoping to help the town in any way I can.
You really enjoy spreadsheets?
That's an accounting thing, It's
I guess so.
a good spreadsheet.
I know. I look at at the letter that you sent us dated November 5th. Everybody has it in their packet. I'm just wondering, you'd rather not name the nonprofit?
I can name. Yeah, it's called Crystal Springs. They work with kids and adults of mental and physical disabilities, both residential and education programs.
Okay. Well, typically the finance committee, the busy time of year is sometimes shortly after Christmas, right up into the annual town meeting, which is always the first or second week in May. And then, we meet again at the end of the fiscal year and occasionally for the rest of the year. But does anybody else have any questions?
I had questions, but they're all answered already. So I think
Sure.
it would be a great addition to our finance committee. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, thanks for volunteering. Mike Carter, do you have a?
Yeah, Adam, just real quick, when I'm looking at your letter and your reference to reserve strategies, I'd be curious to understand a little bit more about what some of those strategies were you employed, and also is your focus more annual, or are you doing any long-term strategic planning from a budgetary standpoint?
For the reserve strategy, it's, depending on the situation and status of what the long-term, it kind of plays into your second question of the long-term goals of, are you saving for a rainy day? Are you saving for a particular project? And what's the capacity to save? A lot of times you can't cut your way to a profit, if you know what I mean. You have to look at different revenue sources, and, you can shop vendors and things like that. But, it's a lot of it's short-term. I'd say, I take that back. I'd say more of it's midterm, looking at what you can save and build as a reserve. And then that ties into strategic planning, long-term budgeting to say, okay, well, we project we might have X dollars available for a project that's been on the back burner that we could, somewhat green light, and then keep an eye on reserve funds, whether it to be spent or rainy day or what have you. And, just kind of it all plays off of one another. So a bit of a long-winded way to say, yes, reserves, it's key to have that and not just breaking even, but then also looking at the short-term, midterm, and long-term kind of all simultaneously to the best you can. Obviously, things change the further you go out and it gets more broad in general, but it's good to have an eye on that longer-term plan.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any more questions? All right, we'll probably look to appoint somebody at our next meeting in 2 weeks. So thank you very much for your time and answering our questions. That's great.
My pleasure.
Right. Let's move on to the ZBA opening. The first one here is, and I see she's on the screen also. Leah, is it Body Whiting? Is that the correct way to pronounce your name? I'm sorry. I know we've communicated through social media and email, but I've never met you, and it's good to meet you in person, so to speak, virtually.
Nice to meet you too. Can everyone hear me?
Yes. So how do you pronounce your last name?
Well, the first piece of advice I'm going to give is don't hyphenate your name when you get married. It makes things much easier. Bada Whiting. Whiting is my married name. So yes, that's how it's pronounced.
I see the email that you sent us. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to do this?
Sure, love to. I've noticed over the last 8 years of living here in Mendon, some interesting town politics. I've seen a good share of positive things, but as of late, there are some areas of concern with conflicts of interest and questionable things being pushed through these boards that I really feel like the town residents should be deciding. So the only solution I see to the problem is to appoint fair and impartial people to all of the boards. So that is why I'm throwing my hat into the ring. I do not have a business that involves construction, real estate, any trades, anything that has an affiliation for that matter that could sway my vote in any way. My degree is actually in flute performance. Yes, I toot the flute for a living. I have a bachelor's in fine arts as well. I have a small organic produce farm that I run on my property. I'm tenacious and I'm a problem solver. And my only interest is that the town of Mendon goes down the path that is the will of the townspeople, not a board that has been appointed without impartial eyes and not elected. If there's a better candidate, I'm very happy to support them as long as they are completely impartial and have no agenda besides what's best for this town. So that's the only candidate that would be suitable in my eyes. And if that's me, I will do my duties 100% to make sure the will of the people is heard. And my apologies that I'm not there in person. If I am appointed, I'll be there as much as I can in person. So thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or?
Yes. What made you choose the ZBA and not another board?
I feel like that was the one that was sticking out to me the most, that needed some better impartial eyes on the board. So I chose that one. And I have no experience in finance, so that is definitely not the board for me.
Well, I have a question. If someone else does get chosen, would you be willing to volunteer for another board if we had
Sure.
other openings?
Yep, absolutely.
Sure, Mike Goddard.
Hi, first, thanks for putting your candidacy out there. Appreciate that. Just curious, from your perspective, can you explain what the role of the ZBA is?
I think we have to follow. Oh, go ahead.
No, within the context of the overall town operations.
Well, the town has bylaws on zoning. I think we should be following those, to be perfectly clear. and that's what I will do. And if they need to be changed, it will be elected by the townspeople in a town meeting.
So just a follow-up.
Sure, absolutely.
Given that statement, so the focus of an appeals board is to look for a special permit or a variance to the zoning laws that are out there. So are you suggesting that you would not look to make changes on a case-by-case basis?
As I said, I have fair and impartial eyes. So I'm totally willing at any point to study, research, do whatever I would need to do to find out what the best solution for the town would be.
Thank you.
One last question. What experience do you feel that you can bring to the ZBA?
Good question. Ask me about the Prokofiev Concerto. I can tell you that and give a dissertation. I'm a problem solver. I'm tenacious. I have worked in the business world. I have owned my own businesses and feel like I can draw on those skills and add something different to the zoning board.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Yes, very good.
You as well. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thanks. How about Mr. Matthew Clark? Would you like to take a seat here and? I know you sent this in yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I saw it yesterday. But so everybody does have the email, but if you could just introduce yourself and.
Sure. My name is Matthew Clark. I've been a resident of Mendon since 2007, and previous to that, a resident of Bellingham. Didn't go too far. I also am a guy that enjoys a good spreadsheet. Full disclosure.
Yikes.
But
Two boards for you to.
Yeah, right.
yeah, I know. I'm good with the finance. Yeah, so you may have seen from my website, I've been involved in environmental remediation all my life. I do environmental cleanup projects. I deal with a lot of agencies, both at the federal, state, and local level. So I deal with a lot of very technical projects that involve plans, federal decisions, just about everything that you can encounter on a project that we would review in town under the ZBA. And with the ZBA, I think that it's a pretty important board. It's probably one of the more important boards in the town for setting the direction of the town. The planning board makes decisions based on mostly by right stuff, whereas the ZBA is reviewing special consideration situations, whether it's a special permit, potentially a request for a variance, or even managing some disputes that might arise out of other decisions in the town relative to zoning and enforcement. So I have a pretty extensive legal background, at least not from training, but through my business and interpreting federal decisions and stuff like that. So I've got the civil part, the litigation part, the legal part, the environmental part, and I'm a resident of the community. I don't do any development in town. And I've watched things progress in town over the years and been sitting on the sidelines thinking about what boards to get involved with. I thought this would be a great fit for me with my skills, my focus, and the amount of time that I have to give to the community.
Does anybody have any questions for him?
Same question. What made you choose the ZBA over on any other board?
Said I've been sitting on the sidelines a bit, trying to figure out which board, or if any board, I was going to join, and finally decided. I noticed an opening in this position, and I said it's time to get involved, and ZBA is a great fit for me.
My other two questions are the same that I would ask the others. I feel like maybe you've already answered them, but feel free to elaborate on either one if you'd like. Could you tell me what the role of the ZBA is? And then secondly, what experience do you feel you'll bring to the ZBA? again, I feel you may have already answered these, but please elaborate.
Yeah.
on anything.
It's super important to note that the ZBA makes, decisions that aren't just based on strictly interpretation of the regulations. There's a lot more involved. There's looking at the situation, whether it be the person involved or the entity involved in applying for the variance or the special permit. Could be the proximity to other entities or businesses in town for that application, and even in application of the regulations, because it's not cut and dry. If you've read some of those, I love reading zoning regulations, so.
More
And
fun.
interpreting them is not cut and dry, really. 'Cause they're not really written to be that black and white. There's a lot of room for interpretation there.
I have a question. Your business, have you done any business in town or for any entities in town or any other businesses?
Just recently, we were the oversight for Mass DEP on an illegal dump in town that we helped clean up. So we were basically the eyes and ears for the state to make sure things were properly followed and cleaned up to the standards. But nothing significant or relevant, I don't think. It's pretty much, I do business outside of town, but I live in town.
Okay. Anybody else? Sure, Mike Goddard, go ahead.
You actually answered my initial question, but I'm kind of curious, under what circumstances can the ZBA grant special permits or, variances to the zoning?
So, you have to look at on the regulations. Let's see if I recall, most applications for special permit or a variance for that matter require some hardship or some other extenuating circumstance. And what constitutes a hardship is a pretty broad category of criteria to fit that. So it's case by case. I mean, proper person, proper place, proper situation. And then you have to look at what the community input is, because if you've got a variance request and you've got abutters and people in the town that are really against something, you really have to take that into consideration. It's not just not just a board. It's really the community that ultimately makes that decision, I believe.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, I do have more. Would you consider any other boards if we don't pick
Sure.
you?
Not the finance though.
Not the finance. All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. And,
Finance is fine.
right, right. Thank you very much. Vicky Grisanti?
It is a lot of time though.
Hi.
Do you mind if I look at some notes? I just.
No, not at all. I appreciate, look at, I appreciate anybody who actually has notes in front of them. Although Lonnie keeps it all on the computer, so.
Try.
So,
Well, I want to thank you all for taking your time to meet with us. I'm really excited to see some other citizens stepping up. I'm Vicky Grisanti. I've lived in Mendon for almost 14 years. My husband and I have 3 kids in town, and so majority of my time has been spent involved in the school systems, both in Mendon and in Upton. I volunteered in a number of ways across those the different schools in town. So, and I put myself forward just as an interested citizen. I think I'm impartial, but I really think there's an opportunity here to get more voices from members of the town involved. And, we've got a lot of young families moving in, and I just think there's opportunity for, a wider group of people to be involved in decision-making and, planning for future growth in town. And so that's why I, put my name forward. In terms of my professional experience, I'm a former, current director of marketing and communications. I've spent probably 20 years in the field. I've worked with engineers over that time period. oftentimes software, mechanical and hardware engineers. So I spend a lot of time making points understood across, a variety of audiences. And I think that's a real strength that I would bring to the position. I think there's a lot of detail that goes into this type of work, and I'm a very detail-oriented person. So I'm learning more and more about zoning regulations and special permits day by day. But I've got a lot of citizens, willing to support and help and offer advice and opinions. And I think that kind of covers it. I just want to see if there's, we lived in Hopedale previously. I grew up in Milford. So, what drew us to Mendon in the first place was sort of the small town atmosphere, the wide open spaces, having a drive-in and a zoo always helps. So, leaving a town like Milford, we've seen what growth can do and how that can impact a town look and feel and, drive families like mine away. So, yeah, I think if there was anything else to cover. In terms of why I chose this time frame, I mean, my kids are older. I'm not as involved in their day-to-day activities as I was previously. So I can still, I think I've got the time to juggle family work and some opportunities in town. So, yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to pose? Or do we
Just on
pretty
a
much?
personal note, how long did you work at when did you start at EMC?
EMC, I was there in 2005 to 12, so 7 years. Yeah.
We missed each other.
Yeah, that happens.
What made you choose the ZBA and not another board?
Yeah, it came to my attention that there was an opening, and I just think I've spent a lot of time, I filled out the master plan survey. I was really excited to see the town take that step. And so as I've seen things unfold, I was just kind of curious about what the opportunities were to get involved, and this one came to my attention.
Yes. I have a question that I probably would have asked the others if I'd thought of it, but what role do you see for someone on the ZBA communicating with other boards?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll be honest, I don't know much about how the boards interact with each other, but I'm happy to, make inroads. I think, honestly, throughout my career, a lot of my job has been building bridges and figuring out how to work collaboratively on different projects. I can give specific examples, but they wouldn't apply to ZBA, so I won't waste your time. But I just think there's, I always look for opportunities and situations and ways to, help people understand different aspects of the problem before reaching a solution. I mean, you want to listen to all different types of stakeholders and bring their thoughts to the problem and come up with solutions. So I think, certainly communicating across boards would be really important for somebody in this role. And I'm, happy to spend time getting to know folks and doing that work.
Sure, Mike Godby.
Because I think we've asked everybody else, but what do you see the role of the ZBA?
Yeah, I was already. So yeah, as I understand it today, and I'm sure I've, just gotten a taste of this, and I'm happy to be learning more, but yeah, certainly right now there's, special permits at the town's request. There's variance issues with, neighbors and other community members. So as I understand it, those are the types of issues that would come to this group. And again, it seems like a pretty small group at the moment. So I think, having certainly having an open position isn't the way we want the town to be, and adding to that, making sure that there's a good cross representation of town, I think would be fantastic. So.
Thank you.
Just one last question from me. What experience do you feel you will bring to the ZBA?
Sure. I think I touched on it, but I mean, again, I'm certainly a problem solver, a communicator. I've worked much of my career trying to figure out how to advance different, opportunities, whether it be, I have this in my notes, I didn't mention it. I mean, I was instrumental in bringing a robotics program to the school system for a period of time before we had to disband due to COVID. So, learning problems are a strong point of mine, and I like trying to figure out solutions and work with different types of people to come up with them. So I think that's what I bring to the group. But again, I'm very happy to see that there's more than one person interested in the role, and, happy if you choose someone else, but also happy to serve.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
Mike, you have another
Yeah,
question?
you just said something that caught my ear. So do you have an example of how, as a problem solver,
Mm-hmm.
within the roles that you've described, have you ever had to deal with, or how have you dealt with conflict within a working board or committee
Working board.
or team? that you're.
Yeah, sure. Teams are probably more applicable. So, I mean, gosh, there's just been so many. Working in my field, you're in, I span communications and marketing. So whether it's a PR issue, we've had those crop up over the years. You're working with members of the media, trying to downplay a situation, or, in that moment, in that instance, it's like heated conversation. You're trying to get to the root of the problem and find out the different, issues at stake. So there've been situations like that. I think the one that I often bring, forward is I saw an opportunity when I was with this large robotics organization to advance more women in the STEM fields. And so it wasn't a very popular thing to do at the time. It was going to require a lot of resources internally to get that done. So, meeting with key stakeholders within my organization, building up frankly, a volunteer group of people within the organization who are going to support that effort was something that I really focused on. And so that initiative launched in 2017. And as a result, there's now, lots of girls in this robotics program now to date. And I'm really proud of that work. So I'm sorry, I probably veered, but yeah, I think, problem
all good.
solving, it's like in my DNA. So yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway, yeah.
Any other questions?
I don't.
Oh, I have the same question that you asked the others, which is, would you be interested in another board if this?
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
pan out?
absolutely. I mean, this was just sort of the tip of the iceberg. I, was brought to my attention that this was open, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity given my, communications experience. I'm an impartial person. But of course, if there's other opportunities within the town, I'm happy to consider those too.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. We
Really
appreciate it.
your time.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Karis is here.
Yeah, okay. So let's circle back. Town council wanted to introduce her replacement, so to speak.
Yes, this Terrace, yes, is someone I've worked with for my entire time at Murphy Hesse, and she is a well-respected, phenomenal municipal attorney, and you will be left in great hands.
Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, everyone. Apologies for being remote tonight. I had another meeting that I was in right before this one. And I'm also just getting over the flu, so I'm not yet past the 5 days period, but I'm really looking forward to working with Mendon. I worked with you all back in the Bob Mangiarotti days with a variety of the boards and committees, and I'm worked with Kim quite a bit, and so looking forward to renewing that relationship, and am here to serve you and in any way that we possibly can, and we'll try to fill Cindy's shoes, although no one can really fill her shoes, but we'll try to provide the terrific level of service that you have from her.
I just, thank you, welcome. And I just wanted to let you know that both myself and Select Board Member Elena Brugos attended that meeting that you were at.
It's municipal.
The meeting for new members. And you did a
Yep.
presentation on open meeting law, right?
Correct. Public records and open meeting law, yes.
Right. And you're the one that warned us that if we were texting at meetings, that our text could be called into as a public record, right?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. So we were listening.
Phones are.
Although my
Well,
phone
I'm
is.
glad
here,
you listened.
I'm not clicking on it. Right.
I glad it was helpful, glad you listened, and, glad to get to know you better as the year begins.
Well, I can tell you that when we came back, I spoke to Kim about, I wonder if we could get that attorney to come give a presentation to our board and to people in town, to different boards and committees, so they understood public record law and how important it is. And now you're going to be advising us. So that's great.
Yes, and I'm happy to do that presentation. I just did it for one of our other clients. I've done it for two others of our clients now. So I've done it about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times now. So happy to set up a time to do it, and can talk with Kim about that as well.
Great.
All right. Well,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Nice
Thank
to
you
meet you
very
all. Thank you very much. Have a happy holiday.
You too.
Thank you. Good luck,
Take
Cindy.
care. Bye-bye.
All right, so item 5, consider exercising right of first refusal for chapter 61A, 101 North Avenue. Should have received some information in your packet. Do you want to, but I guess Cindy, before I ask you to comment, I just wanted to, I received, well, I think, I guess the whole board received an email, right, from Ann Mazar, the head of the land use committee. It gave a little bit of background. I'm gonna read it just for the
Okay.
everybody's edification. With regards to the Vandersloot pulling a portion, selling a portion of their property, 101 North Avenue, out of 61A, or pulling a portion out of 61A. If it is the piece on their boundary that is around 1.5 acres, it's fine for the town to give up the right of first refusal. This is one way the Vandersloot can get some funds to upkeep and preserve the rest of their property and farm at this point in time. And that is based on the drawing came with this. That is the slice on the edge, I guess, that's kind of, it would be a buffer between the folks that she's selling it to, that they're selling it to, and their particular piece of property itself. So Cindy, do you have any advice or comments on it for us?
Yes, the question to me was whether it was a bona fide offer to purchase, because if it isn't a bona fide offer to purchase, then your right of refusal isn't triggered. It appears to be a bona fide offer to purchase. Oftentimes we automatically think if there's any contingency at all, that it doesn't meet the standard, but that's not really true. When you look at the language of the law says it can't be contingent on zoning or subdivision approvals, and this has none of those. The only contingency on this was that they sell the property, if I'm correct. I don't see any contingencies. I think it is up to the board, and you do not have to, you can't decide now because you would have to have a hearing to decide whether or not to exercise your right of first refusal.
Cindy,
But-
is that true? Cindy, is
sorry?
that true? We have to have the hearing whether we choose to or not. So in other words, we couldn't act now. What we'd have to do is schedule a hearing and then make a decision after the hearing?
My advice has always been to take to have a hearing, because even though you may decide you don't want to, there might be members of the public that might have information to share that would influence your decision.
So what we do is look for a motion to move to a hearing.
I don't even think we need to,
Yeah.
we just need to have a hearing, just schedule a
Can I
hearing.
ask a question too before you do that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
So Cindy, I just want to clarify so that we don't delay this process at all. Dates within the document that we were given are already past the actual, they're expired, including the sale date of the property. Is that okay if the documents are executed and already past the point, or should we be looking for them to provide us with updated dates to make sure that we don't find that we're in a delay situation later?
The letter from the attorney is dated December 1st, but the purchase and sale and everything else is back in June.
Right, and then the it's closing date and time, December 14th. Does that matter?
No, because I'm sure there've been all sorts of extensions, and they cannot proceed with the sale until you have either said yes to exercising your right or no. So if they were to actually try to go forward with the sale, you could stop it.
All right, I just don't want us to be the reason that would potentially delay their sale.
Yeah, the original,
You have 120 days to make the decision. However, there's nothing that says you have to wait that long. It appears as if they did send it to everybody, as long as they've done it by certified mail and hand delivered, and it appears that they have done that. Nothing requires you to take the full time, particularly if you think you are, particularly if you think you are going to exercise the right, you want to move quickly because you would have to then schedule a special hearing to meet the full requirements for when you would have to actually exercise. And you would need town meeting authorization to come up with the money. If you aren't going to exercise this right, it's a simpler process. You just hold the hearing, say no, and let them know, and end of story.
Okay. Great.
But it would actually be that we would hold a hearing. At the end of the hearing, this board would take a vote. Is that right?
I'm sorry? I just didn't hear
We
what you
would
said.
hold- We would hold the hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the end of the hearing, we would hold the vote of the board to either bring it to town meeting or just vote not to exercise it, right?
Correct, unless you felt you needed more time to think about it and bring it back to another meeting. But yes, particularly if you don't think you're going to exercise it, it's, it's more of a formality to make sure you jump through all the hoops, just like they have to jump through all the hoops.
All right, does anybody have any questions for council? All
No, I
right,
don't
all right, we'll table it and schedule a hearing. Pick it up. We'll pick a date to schedule a hearing and move forward. And is there any reason why we couldn't do it at the next meeting?
Only that you might need
More
so many, like maybe 14
Yeah,
days. I don't
that's what I'm
know.
not sure.
Have to advertise.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
is there a butters notifications as well?
Yeah. All right, so we'll have admin Laura advertise it and we'll pick a suitable date.
Right, and consider the holiday too. So I mean, realistically, you're probably thinking, first meeting in February, realistically,
Yeah.
just to make sure.
Well, it's like Lonnie said, there's probably statutory time
Right.
frame, so we'll get it advertised and as soon as we can, we will. All right. All right. Number 6, discuss retiring police canine and agreement to adopt the canine Brady. Is the chief on?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Merry
All
Christmas,
right.
chief.
Merry Christmas. Apologies for not being there. I had some family obligations, but I thought this was important enough to get on and try to wrap this up before the end of the new year. Officer Pichel is no longer in the police profession and is in another career right now. That leaves us with Brady. He still has Brady. I think it's only fitting that he should be allowed to adopt Brady. Brady is 8 years and 3 months old, so he was close to retirement anyways. When canines usually retire, I've done the research. I'm also the Semlec canine section chief. They usually go to the owners and they're not the owners, the handlers, and they're adopted and become their owners. I talked to Attorney Macaro about this. He can draw up an agreement where Brady would become his canine and would he'd be responsible for everything with the dog. With that being said, we do have a gift account and a remaining balance on our canine grant that was meant to take care of Brady. My recommendation would be to issue the remaining balances to Officer Pichel. It's roughly about $4,500 to take care of Brady for the rest of his life, to feed him, to vet bills, examinations, to have him fixed, those type of things. That would be, I think, the proper place for that money to flow to, since we're retiring him as a police dog.
So we would take a vote after you executed this agreement with him, right?
Yeah, and I'd be looking for a vote, obviously, to go forward with the agreement, just as it said, and then maybe have either the chairman or the whole chairman or the town administrator review it just to make sure it's okay. But town council would draw it up, and he'd be the one to make sure the town is protected, that we no longer have any obligation towards Brady, and that everything goes towards him. So I'd be looking for a vote for that, and if you agree that the monetary, the monies that we have left in those accounts can be distributed to Matt Pichel to take care of him.
I'm assuming you already talked to Matt Pichel and he was agreeable to all of this, right?
Yep, I did talk to him. He seemed happy about it. Often departments are different what they do with retirees, but I think the dog served us well for all these years, and I think it'd be a good gesture back towards to repay all that service that Matt did with the dog and that Brady did.
I guess I would be looking for a motion then to authorize the town to transfer ownership of K-9 Brady to Matt Pichelle and to distribute any remaining gift balance in that account that was mentioned to him for the purpose of caring for Brady.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, sure.
Yeah, just real quick, because will, Chief, will there be any expenses the town needs to, because last time we talked about this, I think you mentioned that the town would need to have the dog fixed and things like that prior to retiring, and so is there any costs involved for the town before we move all the money out of the account?
I think you said the agreement would be that.
I know,
I would take,
I've
right.
heard two
Yeah, it's a
things,
good
I just
question.
want to confirm.
Yep.
Yep, so obviously he hasn't been fixed yet, so that's my recommendation, is just to give him the account, and it's there for him to deal with. I talked to him about that instead of taking it from the accounts and then, figuring out what the balance is, we just give the balances to him. We are authorized to give the grant money to him. I did do the research on that, and obviously the gift account we can too. So it would be, from this point forward, he would be responsible for taking care of that, unless the town wanted to do something additional for fixing Brady.
All right.
Hey, Chief, one question, and just to clarify for those on the phone, these two accounts were specifically set up for K-9 Brady, and there's no chance of using them for something else. Is that correct?
The gift account, it's a gift account. I'm not sure what the illegality would be. I'd have to talk to town council, but it was gift money that was for K-9 Brady. The grant money cannot be used for anything else besides the K-9.
Gift money, in my recollection as well, cannot be used for anything other than what it's specified for. It would have to be returned if to the donors if you didn't use it for the specific reason.
Yeah.
So if there's no other discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
All right, thank you. I think that's a great gesture, and it sets an example for the local towns around here to support their canines after you retire them.
Right.
Hmm.
And, item 7, discuss town hall main floor renovations.
Yes. Is the answer.
Yeah, well, we have this, you see in the packet there, it looks like there's 5 quotes.
Yep.
Bids rather.
So, right, after our process, as you recall, we decided, just as a abundance of precaution, even though that we had anticipated the project was going to be below $50,000 and would only require written quotes, we decided to do a more extensive bid process to make sure that there wasn't any confusion about any of it. And then when our first due date came around, the building was closed because of the well, and we had required a walkthrough with the contractors in order to submit a bid. And so we extended again as a courtesy, and we did another walkthrough. And then finally the submissions came in this past Monday. As you can see, we received 5, the low bidder being $48,150 for the completion of that side of the project, which is under that $50,000 limit that we talked about, requiring 3 quotes. It was Dan Gardner Carpentry. Dan Gardner, as you may recall, has had contracts with the town in the past, including kind of a contract for the basement project, the library project next door, and then did some smaller remodeling work for us, more cosmetic work over the years. He does our maintenance work. And so this project is a little bit bigger in scope, considering that we are considering the exciting addition of potentially adding a glass wall on the main floor. And so it's going to be a little bit higher, but I've also met with the Historic Commission about a month or so ago to talk about this, and they were very pleased with the work that they had seen from Dan on the work that had already been completed. And so I've emailed them to let them know that in all likelihood, unless there was any objection from the board, we'd be moving in that same direction tonight. So for a point of process, there is a contract. It's 1 or 2 pages that gets signed. It just details the dates, the amounts, it will come with his insurance information. It's the same standardized one we've used in the past 2 times for other projects.
So, and just I'm going to assume this for a second, you can confirm. Dan Gardner Carpentry is the lowest bidder and would be the preferred bidder
Yes.
as well.
Oh, I have a question. So it said in his bid that it didn't include the cost for the glass wall. Can
Right.
you say whether any of the other, like which of the other ones may or may
So-
not include the glass wall?
Right, so they're all add-alls to the bids. So some of them wrote that specifically, but when we did the walkthrough, we told them, and I sent them this specific one that would be purchased, which was this $2,500 wall.
Okay.
And then, so they, when a contractor comes through to do a project like this, afterwards, they submit questions, right? And then all of those answers to those questions go to every contractor who has been interested. And I just would like to say, they all were really excellent. I mean, I spoke with many of them myself, even for the walkthrough and then afterwards with these questions. And I wish we had 5 jobs. I just was pleasantly surprised with the quality of the candidates that we received. But one of the specific questions is about the potential of the wall, because we don't really know until we see what the structure looks like. Once they see where the tin ceiling ends, what the actual dimensions and how the wall would be secured. There's some, in order to make sure that it's a level playing field for everyone, the wall piece itself is an add-alt if there's anything beyond that. So we would come back, we would purchase the material, the wall, and then we'd figure out how that gets installed.
So in other words, none of these quotes include,
Right.
The cost of the glass wall
Right,
itself.
because, right,
But-
and same with asbestos as well. If it turns out if there's asbestos that's found, which we are not anticipating, but that would be an unforeseen cost that we were not preparing for. Same with any additional electrical work that's separate. This is just for construction, some materials, majority of materials.
So when it says, so I'm looking at one of the other bids, and it says frame and install window wall and hallway. Is that the same thing that we're talking about, or is that a separate?
That would be the same space.
Same space. It's about framing and installing it, but not including the cost of the.
Material.
Right,
glass
and it's
wall
also because depending on, so there's 2 issues really at play here. One is budget, right, which is, I only have a certain amount of money for what we can actually afford. So there was a real possibility that we wouldn't be able to afford this wall idea that I think would really enhance that conference room space. And then the next piece of it is whether or not that window wall slides open this way if it's possible, so that's sort of a door in the middle rather than a regular door, or if it's a regular door and then it's just framed out windows. So it's this, depends on what is there, what's possible.
And what is the advantage of a window wall in this context?
So one of the comments that we heard from staff is that they have some concerns around security potentially and visibility, right? When we remove the windows from the hallway. And if we are going to be putting a conference room in that space, I think it does add to sort of, I can totally understand that security issue, which is if there's no windows and it's one wall and it's a conference room, it can be very confining. And so there's an existing window there now, but we're not sure if that wall will be salvaged in the way that it is. It's sort of bumped in and out. So if the wall gets replaced rather than replacing it with just a regular wall, we at least originally in concept, we're thinking of just window across with blinds. But if it's possible to do this other thing that would provide that, it would really add to the aesthetic of the whole project down there. That really would make a big difference. I don't know if you've ever been to the Upton Town Hall, if anyone has ever been over there. So if you go downstairs, they built a conference room, which is really where I borrowed this idea from. They built a conference room that is glass on 3 sides, glass, and then a wall on the back downstairs. So even though it's in the basement, it's sort of in the middle of the hallway. It really has a lot of visibility and light in it. So it's like it's a really cool workspace.
It does opens it up a little bit to
Right.
that feel of the whole corridor,
I have another question, sorry. So there's not a huge difference between Dan Gardner and then the next the
Fox.
next one. So can you speak to any of the differences between them and like where you see the difference coming in?
So the only thing, so we also worked with Fox, who I thought did an excellent job
Painting.
on both the town hall painting and the library painting, and they are local and they did Milford as well. And I think they are excellent contractors as well. And that's why I said, I think the benefit here is that we know the quality specifically of the construction work, particularly the fabrication of the molding and the framework for the details that have been done downstairs. That was all done by Dan Gardner before, and we've seen the work with the basement and with the library. And if for some reason Dan was unable to do the work or would take the contract, I would feel very comfortable moving forward with Fox as well, because they were super responsive, came through twice, really interested in the project. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but how quickly they turned around. Once we had actualized some savings for the town hall and it came in lower than they were the ones who really sort of encouraged us to like take another look at maybe getting the library because their equipment was already here, and they are really easy to work with and professional. And so I think they're both good. And I will say that I talked to Full Scope too, and I thought he was really nice. And so I think we have a lot of good options, and I think that's really encouraging.
All of them are equally ready to begin within the required timeframe.
Yeah, I mean, I told them I would reach out after the new year once a determination had been made. I mean, I have to respond with the results, number one, and then two, who it was awarded to, and then,
The only question I have is Dan Gardner obviously calls out the tin ceiling and references repair, which, and sort of I like, versus I don't see any mention of tin ceiling on, say, the Fox painting. So is that something everybody identified, or was Dan Gardner the only one to identify that?
So Dan is, so because Dan is familiar with the intricacies of repairing the tin ceiling, because he had already done so on the other side, he's more aware, I would say, of what it's actually going to take to do those specific restorations. But every one of these contractors came through and viewed all of it.
So they acknowledged it was there, because they don't really list it like.
Yeah, in some of their questions, like I said, were about the specifics of the tin ceiling.
Yeah.
What happens to the electrical if we have to move it? What happens if we can't find replacement materials for the tin? Are there the places we can salvage it from?
So although it's not itemized, they acknowledge that's work to be done.
Right, that's part of the walkthrough
Right.
part, right? It's part of, that's why you don't have to require a walkthrough on a job like this, but because it's so specialized, particularly around, the wall in the back that has the fireplace in it, that's historic, that really can't be moved, and even, what's in that wall, right? Like, which walls can be moved, which ones
Yeah,
can't.
I
It's
understand
a-
that. It's just interesting that it's, I guess, repair and paint ceilings, replace tiles is their version of saying,
Fix the tin ceiling.
but I mean, fixing the tin
Right.
ceiling's a lot more.
That's my,
intricate.
right, that's my.
That,
point
that,
there.
so.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm actually more comfortable with somebody calling it out because they know what they're getting into.
I agree, especially when they've actually already worked with it.
I guess I have yet another
That's fine.
question. So,
Yeah. Believe me,
so I mean,
waited a
so-
long time.
so I have the impression that Dan Gardner is a smaller company than
Mhm.
Fox Painting Company. So, uh,
I don't know how many employees Fox has, but.
but
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
say
well,
yes.
so I had the impression just that, well, I just wonder how this might affect the time frame of the project. So does Dan Gardner have employees who work with him? Does he subcontract?
So the time frame is kind of interesting because we've blown that out of the water. Okay, so in the past, at a project like this, when we had the basement project, he was able to do it himself with two people working with him, right? And this second time, for some specific stuff that he subcontract, he can do the drywall, but he subcontracted the drywall to go faster so that he could fabricate the wooden frames, that sort of thing. It's more of a judgment call, right? In terms of timeline for completion, I mean, I shouldn't say it out loud in case any of it, but I'm less concerned at this point about the speed of completion than the quality of completion. And so, you know, my hope was that it would be done by March. My hope now is that it's done by May, right? And I think it's a realistic timeframe, even for one contractor on site. I mean, one of the rooms alone is purely paint, cosmetics, switch out the tiles and put carpet in. The biggest piece of this is doing the conference room. So I don't think it'll take half as long as the other side took.
So there wasn't, this is not time bound as it stands now. There was no request saying
No,
you need to
about-
want to get it done by this.
No, I would, it's
Have they,
partic-
well, the other question, did they commit to a timeline as
I-
they submitted a
I
quote?
told them by the end of this fiscal year.
Okay.
Because that's when the funding exists.
Okay.
So but if we had to, for some reason, extend it into another fiscal year, we would encumber the money and that's how we would handle that.
Last question, if I may, is this is nothing to do with back here, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Right. So is there I'm just curious if we can just get an update on that as well, because it's another idea, town hall
Sure.
renovation.
We're gonna do this, we'll just,
Yeah, we can wrap this up.
Let's,
yeah,
yeah,
I could
let's,
do it with the
I feel
budget.
like these two things might impact each other if they start working together.
Yes.
well, let's take a vote to award the contract and then she'll talk about the budget update because that kind of rolls into the next
I
fiscal
move to
year.
award the town hall main floor renovations RFP to Dan Gardner Carpentry.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
And it's unanimous.
Great, excellent.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the budget update and maybe you can
Sure,
roll the work of the ADA work and the back door and that larger project into that.
absolutely. So I'll just continue talking about that. I think of it as an ATM issue / FY24 budget issue. So yes is the answer. We have received one scope from the contractor who came through to work through the first time. I asked him to, because we've now funded the portion of it, to include the phase 2 step of what the scope would be, which is doing the actual estimating of costs for us for May so that we could have an idea of what we're rolling into. And that's what he's doing right now. So he's had some family delays. And so I told him we would look to move on it in early January. So I'm just waiting for a revised scope to come back with phase 2. But yes, I mean,
Are you happy with what you've seen or heard?
yeah, I liked the person when he came through. I thought it sounded like he would do a good job. Besides that, right, I like the initial cost, which seemed very affordable. Looking forward to seeing the second cost and hoping it's as affordable. I can't really speak to responsiveness because I have to take it at face value,
Yeah.
right? But I believe it's genuine, and so I'll go with that for now.
That's really more swag or ROM, whatever you want to call it. If you're happy with that first one, that's,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I thought it was reasonable. It didn't scare me.
Yeah.
I thought this is a good price. So, you know, and so then because just like with other studies that we do, it's really important for decision making. We need those data points about actual costs in order to know what's feasible and not feasible and how we move forward. And it's great to do a study, but if it doesn't come with that next piece, then it's hard to put it into action because we have to quantify it. So if we can do that right now and hopefully have something to decide on for May, that would be great, right? So that's the update on that piece. The budget, going great. I finished the new chart of accounts conversion. I'm pretty sure I CC'd you all on this spreadsheet. So in order to expedite the process, what I've done for the departments is what I typically do is send out a memo and then they go into KVS and it's very similar, update their existing budgets. For now, what I'm doing, I've downloaded that KVS data. I'm asking them to go in and put in their budgets, right, in a shared spreadsheet. And then I'm going to meet with them and show them how that looks, where it goes in the new budget. And if you go in that spreadsheet and you look and it's open to everybody and to look at and edit till December 31st, there's another tab that shows the list of new departments. So they can take a peek at kind of what it looks like without getting overwhelmed about, you know, what does this all mean? There's really, I mean, there are a lot of new departments, but there's there's not a lot of, the majority of the changing, the complicated piece of the new budget is the stuff from that 199 that I was talking about that I have to reallocate. There's not as many changes to the other budgets. There are changes, but they're not as substantial as that. So I'm gonna, like, there are gonna be some changes to trash and Board of Health that might be more complicated, and our Jack is fairly new, so I'm going to sit down with him and go through that. So I'm going to go through it with all of them, but I'm hoping that'll help expedite, and then I'm going to input the data myself for this year. And then next year, you have to go, we're still learning, so you have to go into the system, provide them access just specifically by department to those individual lines that they can edit, and then give them access into the new system to do just that. And so rather than overcomplicate it, since at this point I can change the lines, that's where we're going with for this year. I did reach out to the financial team. I gave them two options, either tonight or January 4th for revenue presentation. They've picked January 4th, and I think I added you to the calendar for that. So they are confirmed to be here for that. I did meet with the superintendent last week and the town manager from Upton to sort of just talk initially about our budget thoughts for the year. In sort of just a general overview of where we think revenues are going the next couple of years and how that looks for overrides and that sort of things. No specifics because we're not there yet. I told them that we're still going to move forward with a conservative approach because we are not anticipating any substantial new revenues, at least for a couple of years, due to potentially marijuana increases or business development. And that we don't know until we see what the requests are, but I'm not anticipating us having a substantial list of ads that we could fund this year anyway, knowing already that our Worcester County retirement number is up $125,000 for FY24. It went up 98,000 last year. It's going up another 125. And so, when we only get 300 total, it makes it tricky.
What's the
But
driver of those increases?
What?
What's the driver of those two increases year over year?
We're going to find out. We're going to find out.
We don't know.
Well, I don't know specifically the data. Oh, that's Worcester County retirement.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's substantial number increase in retirees specifically year to year, or if it's so I've already met with Shelley to talk about sort of
They
getting.
just gave you a number and said, this is what it's going
Yeah,
to be.
we just get.
But they don't give you the detail with it?
Well, they sent us a letter later, but the number we got now is the preliminary sheet that lists all the towns.
Yep.
And I mean, without getting too far down the rabbit hole, because one of the things that's very interesting to me is that MERS's numbers, overall retirement numbers, are pretty close to ours.
Yeah.
And our employee numbers are substantially different. So I have some theories in my head about why, but I don't know. And I'm very curious, which of course made me think again about we should be looking about, and they're different, but we need to be looking at retiree things.
Yes, I mean, I will say that
They're not the same, but they are in the same. Right?
having been through this, through the FinCon from several years, Worcester County retirement, I mean, it has everything to do with returns on their investments, and also the number of retirees overall in the whole system, those numbers. But one thing specific to Mendon that we've talked about this, we really need to look at is what we give as a benefit to retirees for health insurance.
Right.
Versus what we're required to do. Because if I'm not mistaken, it's usually we pay 50% of we're required to pay 50% of the premium, but we have continued to pay 75% of the premium from the time they retire to when they're old enough for Medicare.
Correct.
And that's, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what that number is, but it's significant and it gets bigger.
It's
every
huge.
year.
And another thing that the town should look at, I mean, these are tough things to pass, but they have to be looked at. We don't have specific policies around who we will provide health insurance coverage to, right? So like for how long? And so I'm sure in all of your jobs, you've had health insurance audits before in which they match the town, whatever your company's policy to whoever we're covering. And we don't have any specifics around regulations specifically for that. Like
We have situations where we've had prior, retired employees that had through some kind of a court agreement through a divorce
Mhm.
where we continue to provide health insurance, for, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Or just-
and the issue is for the spouse, if the spouse is significantly younger, they have many more years to go to retirement, and I don't know. We don't know if, if we change our policy that
So-
says we just deal with just the retiree.
There's a,
Yeah, you're doing
Yeah,
the
I
same,
get it,
you're
yeah.
doing the same thing I did.
well, I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I've been here for, this is my 9th budget, right? So,
We've been through this together, right?
so this is when it's really hard because it's very personal, but I do think we need to look at what's happening cost-wise. I mean, it's no secret that benefit overhead costs are the thing that are sinking towns, right? Those, and that, at some point,
OPEB.
we have to look at the numbers and make a decision about some of it, even if it's gradual, even if it's a plan, because it can't, it's not enough just to say anymore, well, it's disrespectful for people that work. It's not.
It's
I
a
mean,
deal breaker.
It's,
I mean, it really, you talk about what drives it. It's a significant issue. It's something that we can't afford to continue to, not that we've ignored it, but we haven't really addressed it. We haven't really, we've just kind of,
It was never like this before, though. It was never this
Correct.
ugly.
well,
that is
if
correct.
you just think about, then if you can think of, I'm sure
I
you
mean, up
all.
98,000 this year and 120, I'm sorry,
Well,
last
for,
year.
well, for retire,
125.
well, this is, well, so Worcester County retirement and then the Medicaid. If you think about Worcester County retirement, I mean, in theory, we can pretty much figure out why that would be going up. If we can probably all name 6 or 7 people who have retired in the last couple of years and all of their salaries are around $100,000.
Mhm.
That's what more people are making more than they used to when they retired before, and they retired a little bit later, right? That's it. I assume that's it, and maybe there's some complication or change in the way that it's calculated. On this other one, this health insurance benefit piece, we have very generous benefits here, right? 75-25 is incredibly generous. And the fact that we pay the deductibles for employees is incredibly generous, right?
Hang on, is the deductibles, are they employee sponsored though, or do we just fund that?
We fund the deductible. So they pay zero.
We did
out of
that,
pocket.
we did that for a good reason because of the, it's saved us significant money, but it's something that in negotiations, we have to continue to look
Because
at.
there's a new, and I don't know how new it is, but I know in the private side, we just found that we can do pre-tax money for family care, like
Like an HSA.
adult daycare or child daycare, and also there's an amount you can put in towards that you can use for pre-tax insurance money as well.
Right.
But it's not a lot.
Well, and I have no idea at this point. I don't find out until January typically what our health insurance renewal would be. We are in our 2nd year of that renewal. I just got the phone call today. Typically what happens every 2 years is that I work with a third-party health insurance broker in order to make sure that we are competitive, and then Maya will come back with a more competitive rate. And then to get that rate, you have to be locked in for 2 years, and then the cycle repeats itself. That's typically what happens on health insurance. The only, like I said, the big swings for us around cost, like plan design changes. I mean, and now we're really going down the rabbit
Right,
hole,
yeah,
but
let's
like,
not.
that's how we ended up picking up the full deductibles a couple of years ago, because basically if we leveraged our
It
own
was
risk
cheaper.
by funding the deductibles, it saved us like 12%, and it's been very costly ever since. But there's a lot of things like that we look at every year, right? But as the budget gets tighter and tighter, some of this other stuff that might not be that popular is sort of the stuff we have to really take a serious look at. Other than that, I sent you in that, if you open it, it's not concrete because we don't have our meetings confirmed, but I put a tentative budget schedule in there. Assuming that we meet every 2 Wednesdays, and we meet 2 Wednesdays from now until forever, till May. I assume that you want to continue the practice that we started last year, which is inviting the FinCom to come to our meetings and have our joint meetings together. And so we'll make sure that we invite them through every step and every process all the way through.
While we're
and-
talking about it, have we had any progress on finding a new admin or,
No, and we actually are down 3 admins as of today, but we just lost another one today. So we'll talk about that separately.
okay.
Right, so we're having a real hard time keeping nighttime clerks for boards and commissions that are only 5 hours a week. So we might have to look at a better solution for that.
Just one option. Is there a way that we could maybe get, say, a single person to do multiple boards? That way they make a little bit more and it's maybe a little bit more attractive to them, or, you know,
Yeah.
two rotating that can, I don't know, maybe just to create.
Yes, yes, that's possible.
And you know, what, another,
If we can find anybody.
and another thing I thought of, and I don't know if this is legal, but you deal with Valley Tech and Co-op, right?
Yeah.
What about somebody in
So the
business
only-
services or
Yeah,
something?
so the only thing that stinks is they had an office management, they had like an office management shop,
That's what I was thinking.
and it went away.
Oh, it went away.
I had gotten an intern
Oh,
for the last year that it was in, and I said, well, we have the office side too, so we were getting them from the IT side and the office side. We got in on the last year, and then they fizzled it out, so it wasn't a great
doesn't exist
opportunity.
anymore. Yeah.
So we'll say this. So we're doing the FY24 budget, right? Some of these reports that we're anticipating coming in the spring, right? It might be too aggressive. We have no idea to consider any of the changes for FY24. We don't know, depending on when we get them back, the highway study.
That's a
or
great,
the
that's a
DLS.
great segue, because what the, part of this too, you know, we've had this Division Local Services had done this review. I spoke to him today.
Good.
He spoke to Kim a few days ago. I actually have a call with him in the morning to go through the high points of it.
Oh, good.
And what his plan is he wants to have a follow-up meeting with the financial team, Kim and I, and then he wants to roll that out with them to this board, because what he doesn't want to do is just come to the select board and say, okay, here's my report, here's my suggestion, this is what you need to do. What he wants to do is review it all with the financial team so they understand, so that when he rolls out his recommendations, that the financial team is aware of it and can help us look at it. But it's not going to be, again, the report is still going to be given to us. It's going to be this board's job to decide, you know, what to do with the recommendations.
Right.
So,
And the same with highway, with the exception of, we will have a vacancy in May, which sort of expedites what we're trying to do over there around hiring. I mean, I'm anticipating potentially recommendations around changes to some union positions, but we would have to negotiate those anyway, and their contracts are FY24, so we're probably a year, we'd be negotiating it next year. But to your point about this clerk situation, right? It's an obvious situation. We're about to turn through our 3rd or 4th conservation clerk in 3 or 4 years.
Oh,
It-
Maya.
So.
she did, that's the one?
So it's the time constraints and.
Yeah, I mean, to be,
So-
I met her the other night, like she had just flew here from out, and she
Right,
works
so
way out. in the
Yeah,
country.
her job changed or something,
we
right?
need,
Right, with
we
that
need to
program.
find a better solution is my point to all of it. It's great when we can bring in part-time professionals to fill these spots like planning and building and whatever. But maybe we do need to think about cross-trained floating clerks that cover multiple departments and boards. And, you know, I assume that's going to be part of whatever we're considering, and sooner than later.
So when
is all
so
I'm
when are we
saying.
gonna get the LS report, you said?
He said that he said he's 95% done. He wants to meet with me, but he gave me a promise by the middle of January.
Because I mean, if there's things in there
Huh?
that
That'll be December.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
that, I did too.
if there's things
That
in
was a
there,
discussion we had today. I'm sorry. That was the discussion we had today.
I mean, if there's things in there that allow for the thought process of what we're trying to do, like we're thinking about what we're doing in the building department and doing different things over there, and even in other departments, is there may be an opportunity that we can add these these jobs into the job description as it sits, maybe. Again, wait, let's see what the DLS has to say, what they. if it
Again,
all
that is
fits in.
specifically, that's specifically for the financial team. That's what they did.
Yep.
Was a financial team. And then we got this $37,000 grant to do a similar study with highway.
Yep.
You know, whether we want to, you know, and part of that is a search to pay for a professional search and see, you know, are we going to pull parks into this or the tree warden into this, or how does that all, you know?
Makes sense.
I would also say, you know, you know that a lot of our clerical positions are not at 40 hours.
Right.
So we probably have 3 or 4 positions that are admin positions that are not at 40, that probably have capacity that we could potentially negotiate for and add to jobs or whatever if we had to. So, you know, I never like to make anyone have to do, but, you know, I definitely think there's a lot of options that we're going to have to be considering and be open to. I'm just going to keep an eye around funding and what in timeline.
I feel like this is like we're seeing like that loss of that part-time workforce where people had a second job and this was something that would be it, and just an unfortunate.
Part of the
fallout.
same, I think it's part of the same thing about why is it so hard to get help? I think it's part
Yeah,
of that.
and you would
same-
think with the addition of remote accessibility at night for these meetings, it'd be easier to do the jobs, right? For some, for
Yeah, at this
especially.
point, they don't even need to be here. They just need to remote in and
Right,
turn
so
the.
maybe
turn the
that's- I
recorder
mean,
and take
like I
notes.
said-
Well, you know what? I don't think so, but you know what? I don't know. When it comes to, we have to ask our open meeting expert
Mhm.
if they
Yeah.
do have to be, yeah, but
No, they
I would-
don't.
I think that, I would think you're right. They don't need to be,
Right.
right?
Do we have
Anywho.
an outline of open positions? Caroline?
Yeah, that's part of the conversation today was, it seems to be,
We have 2.
well, for 3 now.
Well, I just,
Because we have the ZBA one, we have the FinCom one.
positions.
We have 3 clerk positions,
clerk
but in
positions.
general, what's the status of open FTEs across the town operations?
So we have 1 opening in finance, one full-time that was posted this week. There's a part-time clerk position in there also open. The finance clerk is a stipend position, so technically doesn't, but that's open right now. Conservation is,
So just, I guess, if I were to Google job opportunities in Mendon, Mass, I could see all these jobs listed, right?
yeah, they should be on the,
Link,
there's on the,
Indeed or something
right,
like
they
that.
get posted right there. They go on Indeed. They're listed on the website as
I
opening.
mean, yeah,
And
just,
typic-
I'll
and
go.
typically
I'll go
we
look.
email
Yeah,
them
I'm
out.
Curious.
You know, ZBA and finance clerk, we don't typically.
And
do
not,
the
not boards
same,
and committees. I'm thinking
Right.
more
But we only have,
paid positions.
right.
Yeah.
we only have the 1 full-time right now for,
So 2 quick, getting
Finance.
back to budget real quick. One, I'm hearing no surprises so far in terms of asks. We're not necessarily expecting to see any, I mean, we know library is
I
gonna.
haven't
ask.
analyzed anything yet.
Okay, I thought you said that, so I just wanted to confirm that. So that's a TBD. Second thing is, what was communicated to regarding the school? Because there's a subcommittee meeting coming up that either Elaine and I will probably attend. So we'll want to know what was communicated. Was it a sort of a 50-50? We'll see what that
We
means,
didn't-
like this number of
so-
dollars.
So it was just Maureen and Joe and I. So it wasn't super technical about, it was more of a historic overview of what the budget looked like and how it works in a
And just-
regional school system.
Just so we know, when she says Joe, that is
Sorry.
the town administrator.
In
in
Upton,
Upton,
sorry.
town
okay.
manager.
So, right, so I met with superintendent and and basically this is his first regional school district, right? So we were sort of talking through the history. The superintendent is fairly new as the superintendent, right? So we're sort of just getting caught up on how we got to where we are and then sort of thoughts about overrides and like they had some basic, well, she had some basic questions about how we approach our budget, you know, and how they approach their budget and, you know, just, is there anything that they need to be aware of at this point for this year?
If there's any specifics you could share, and not now, just send us an email, just because what I wouldn't want to go into a meeting and get it hit with a question and say, we said what?
No, what I shared is what I already told them, which is I'm anticipating conservative revenues for the next couple of years until we see this marijuana money come in. So I wouldn't anticipate any real funding changes on our side. And that the only thing I think that we have even, and Jay is the one who sent me the Worcester County retirement number. So he's aware, like, they know where we're at. I don't see our budget year being much different than last year, right? That's our message. If, we'll know better.
But last year, I want to be clear, last year, wasn't that zero and they went, or what was the? Where did I thought was it the year before I saw a zero recommendation?
2
Well,
years.
It was, yeah.
Right.
a couple of years.
So it was,
So
the
are we saying
entire amount
zero?
was an override.
Right.
Right.
So.
Right.
So so we'll just recap it again, because I
Right.
told them when I was there. So the issue is, in the past, we gave, right, you get 2.5% and you get half of new growth.
Right.
Anything more than that is basically an override unless we can find a way to make it work. So a couple of years ago, our numbers, so one previous year, all the town had left after we gave more than that amount was $60,000, okay? So the next year, when we came into the budget cycle from the beginning of the year, both towns started communicating with the school district in December, and they were saying that their request was going to be $900,000. And they wanted direction from us, to which I said, well, you know what our numbers are. It's 2.5% and probably about $315,000.
got.
That's the 50-50 number, even though we don't use it. So if your request is more than 315,
Right.
it's an override,
Mhm.
right? And if you are going to go for 900,000, then we're going to go to zero, right? Because then it's, it's
What's the difference at that point, essentially?
right, it's $300,000, right? And so you're either gonna pass it and you're gonna need it, right? And that's what the debate came about. Well, they just had done a smaller override the year before and wasn't on there, and so like, we aren't capturing the override money after. So in some towns, when it passes, the town will then take some. That's not happening here, right? And so we didn't have it to give. So when their request came back at 890, we said, great, override, fine, zero, right? Here's a number. If you get to 315, we've got you, right? We didn't put that 315 into our budget. We put it in a line.
Yeah, I just want to back up on that idea because I'm not sure I follow that.
Well, just so we're
Be
clear.
really clear, so baseline still is 315.
Yes.
Now, whether or not, I would never tell them we're going to zero you out and override the whole thing. They can choose to do that. That's my point. I mean, I'm like, we
Who
still,
can choose to do it?
Right.
No,
No.
we choose, no.
But what
we
would,
can
what
zero-
would, but,
we can
we
zero it out.
can do that, but I'm not sure why we're
but,
doing.
well,
that.
the answer would be
Yeah.
is, she's telling me what we did in the past.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's this group that would decide to do that, but
Right.
the logic is the same. Or I think would be the
Yeah,
same.
you're saying an override, if you need 900 and you're going to ask for 600 override, just ask for 900 override.
Correct.
That's the logic.
That's correct.
I don't necessarily agree with that logic.
and
My
I'm-
point, where we are now, right now, I just want to make sure, so we're not caught by surprises. We're still saying it's 50, it's 300, whatever, you know the number, you
Right.
do your budget.
Well, we've
And then
stopped.
we have a question when they come back with asking for more.
So
That's fair?
that is a good point.
Yes.
Because one of the things we talked about changing, so we don't use 50-50 anymore, right? Because quite frankly,
Just point of order, it has come up in this board, I have asked that, I've looked at the recordings and we flat out said, we do use 50-50, you said we don't. So I want to be really, I'm getting confused.
What I think, well, my understanding is that it effectively it becomes 50-50, but we don't start at that point. We
Where do we
need,
start if they ask?
So
Just let them do their budget and go from there?
you're right, we wait for
Right.
their request to come in.
yes,
Right.
that's the
Right.
answer.
Okay.
And then the guidance that I give is exactly that, which is it's this, if it's 2.5%, plus I've got 2.5% plus about half of
I
this.
think
That's
a
usually what
better-
I'm relaying.
I think a better explanation, and Lonnie can back me up on this, is what we're saying is, we go to each department, say, what do you need? And normally it's, we level service fund from last year and then, and then we go to ask after that. Same thing with the school, rather than, because sometimes the schools say, well, how much can you give us?
Yeah.
And then and the answer is, what we're saying is, no, tell us what you need.
Right.
So
So that's been my response to them is
and
that
that's
we
the
do an
right-
expense
at this
driven
point,
budget.
At this point, that's where it is.
That's
Tell us what you need.
Right.
Well,
And-
how much can you give us? Tell us what you need.
Well,
Good.
That's been the same argument for a bit.
Right.
They were saying we were cutting their budget because it was zero. That's not true. We were still funding their budget at the same exact level from the previous year. We were just waiting to see how much the town wanted to support for their budget, right? Because that makes a huge difference. So, without getting, we're going there anyway, but one of the things about budget strategy, right, that I think this board has tried to get away from in the last, and Mark is on too, so he can chime in if he needs to, but we've tried to get away from sort of dramatizing anything around the budget. The budget is the budget is the budget is the budget, right? We tried to get away from sort of, it's Upton driving a bus or Mendon driving a bus, or what's the mystery? I mean, our budget's not that complicated. So we have a strategy around, and this is the same thing that I relayed to the superintendent last week when we met and the Upton town manager. The town's position, our position is, if you tell us you're presenting a budget to us and you're telling us this is what you need, we're saying, okay, we believe you, this is what you need, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that we can fund all of it, but we're not discrediting the fact that you need it.
Right.
That's not for us to do.
That's rather than asking them or them asking us what we can give them, the answer is, tell us what you need, and then we figure out how we're going to fund it.
Right. But in reality,
Right.
you obviously we want to work together to sort of cut some of the steps so that we can get closer to where we need to be. And if we can sacrifice a little so they can have something, we do that, and we've done it in the past. But what I don't want to do is sort of the theatrics of, so do a scenario in a year like we're talking about with this zeroing out the budget, okay?
You know what, we
No,
don't even
I'm-
need to go there.
I'm just there,
Okay, all
because
right.
there are people listening online.
Yeah, I know,
who
I
are
agree.
Curious about the budget. Our budget is very small. We know exactly how much is coming in every year. We know exactly where it's going out. We don't have a lot of wiggle room, right? We're not opposed to the school's budget, right? We support the school's budget to the extent that we can, but the select board individually can support the school's budget at any number, but after a certain point, 2.5% plus some 50/50 plus 300,000, anything beyond that means a cut to town services. So asking the board to support something beyond that is a big request, knowing that we would have to cut services at some point beyond that. And I don't think and so rather than sort of start debating or making them jump through hoops about whether this position is more worth it or that position is more worth it, because ultimately it goes to town meeting and the residents decide, right? And if the school says that's what they need for a budget, then that's what we support, or not, right? You debate the merits of what's in it, but that's sort of where we're at. And, and I told them, and it's true, my position is I hope their budget always passes. But what I do not want to do is start putting together hypothetical cut lists early in order to use it as a scare tactic in order to get people to see what that means to us, just
We're
in
silent
concept.
agreement. I just want to have very clear, specific discourse, so nobody is confused by what's being said. I'm going to be really clear on that. And I think an expense-driven budget is what I actually said to them the last time, because they don't know what the state's going to give them.
Right, that's the
You-
biggest. And this year,
But you know what your needs are. Go there. And I said, I would expect to see something about your priorities, your must-haves. What are your contractual obligations versus what are your,
this year is even more difficult because now there's a change in administration. We have a new governor who's still figuring out what she's going to be doing, so.
Right, and I'm wrapping it up. The last thing I want to say is, because I think it's important for people to understand, because I think we do sometimes get an anti-school rap over here, and it's not the case. I mean, we do everything we can over here that we should be responsible for, which is we look at efficiencies, we try to save money, we do everything we can over here. Just using as an example, last year we regionalized dispatch to savings of it's going to be $1 million over 10 years. We saved $500,000 last year. The town's budget did not increase by that amount.
Yeah.
It did not, right? It gets spread out. And so, I don't think we need to keep moving forward sort of with the drama around it. I get that it's very personal to people, but from our standpoint, it should really just be fact-based and numbers-driven, and hopefully we can, keep it there.
The last comment I will say is that, before anything else regionalized in this town, the school regionalized with Upton. And when it did, the state had made certain guarantees about, realizing economies of scale and monies that the state was going to plow in, things like 100% of regional transportation, because transportation
If
costs more.
approved.
Yeah, right. Well, it's the problem with it, Lonnie, is they say that it'll be funded at 100%, but there's no mechanism or penalty if they don't. And what happened was, and this was when I was on the school committee, the Valley Tech School Committee in the 80s, at a certain point, a big chunk of that money just stopped. They used to give the money and say, look, if you're not at a certain level, we're going to plow more money in. And the state just decided it's too expensive, so we're not going to do it. So they essentially reneged on what they had agreed and have kind of set us up on this collision course, and we just keep banging up against it every year. But again, what I'd say is just what we talked about, tell us what it is and we'll figure out how we can fund it. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Um,
Out of words, but,
so- 9, consider 2023 annual license renewals. I need to read this list, right? And then we,
Mhm.
Okay, that's fine. I was gonna just do it as part of the motion, but that works.
however you want
I think,
No,
you
just
I
read it.
think you have to read it.
to, let me read it.
Yep.
Restaurant, all alcohol, common victular, entertainment licenses, Miss Menden Diner, 14. I'm just going to read the name. I'm not going to read the addresses. It's written in here, okay? So it's Miss Menden Diner, GV Menden Management for Grandview, Willowbrook Restaurant LLC, DBA Willowbrook Restaurant, New England Steakhouse, DBA New England Steak and Seafood, Q&T Restaurant LLC, doing business as Alicante Mediterranean Grill Restaurant and Lounge, NLCK Inc., DBA Lowell's Restaurant, Havco 2, DBA Greenhouse Wood Fired Pub. Then we have general on-premise all alcohol common victular Miss Menden Diner 2, general on-premise all alcohol adult entertainment Showtime Entertainment LLC, package stores LABH Inc., DBA Menden Wine and Spirits, Shirji Nisang Corporation, DBA Liquor World. Now we have a restaurant, wine and malt regular common victular, ATLC LLC, DBA Deluxe Pizza, restaurant, all alcohol common victular, automatic amusements, entertainment, Roy Ventures Corp., DBA The End Zone Sports Pub, The Outer Limits, Southwick Wild Animal Farm, DBA Southwick Zoo Galliford's, general on-premises wine and malt regular common victular movie entertainment jukebox, Fat Brothers LLC, DBA Menden Twin Drive-In, farm winery pouring permit, wines only, Susan Vandervock, DBA Vandervock Farm Winery. These are the common victualers, A&Z Golden Corporation, DBA DB Mart, Jashal Enterprises Inc., DBA Sunny Farms, CL Pizza Inc., DBA known as Pizza Corporation, Gold Medalist LLC, DBA Gasco Fuel, D&E Donuts, DBA Dunkin' Donuts, Imperial Gas LLC, Muffin House Cafe, L&M LLC, DBA Subway, The Hideaway Pizza, LaPlante Inc., Clough School, Misco Hill School. Then we have Class 1 license, East Acre Recreational Vehicles, Imperial Chrysler Dodge Jeep, Imperial Ford, Bob's Marine, Meehan Automobiles Inc., DBA Imperial Chevrolet, Imperial Chrysler Dodge Jeep, DBA Imperial Sprinter. Then we have Class 2 licenses, Jam Shack LLC, DBA Forefront Auto, Certified Sales, Ron Champney's Used Cars, Copart of Connecticut, Native Automotive, Richie's Driveline, Sutful Auto Sales, Peluso Precision Auto LLC, JNG Motors LLC, Parker's Peddlers Transient Vendor Licenses, Larry Joe's New England Fire Pit, Lodging House, Mark L. Scott, Executive Manor Lodging House. Do I
So
have a
moved.
motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I'm sorry, I think I had one question.
Yep. Was one of them misread or
No,
misprinted?
no. Yeah, what it was. I forget, sorry, never mind.
All right, so we, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. All right. Now, executive session. I move to enter into executive session purpose 3 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss litigation. If discussion is done in an open meeting, it may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the town. Maury Street update. We need a roll call vote, and we're only going to, we're just going to come back just to adjourn.
Okay.
Right, roll call vote, Morale, aye.
Tenio, aye.
Brugos, aye.
Chanel, aye.
Goddard, aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's go into executive session. John, thank you for waiting. You want to come on up?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, have a good night.
Everybody, Merry Christmas.